Hello, hello. Tonight, we're doing a little wine and wisdom with this fabulous Rioja and this fabulous guest, Gina Molinari from the homeland. Just another girl from the homeland. And have a little bit of wine and wisdom going on. Gina's going to tell you all about how to tell your story, how to be a better speaker, how to tell your story with your branding, all about confidence, clarity, and authenticity. And being authentic, my wine glass says, queen of everything. So here's to a little authenticity. And I'm going to give a big shout out to Mike DePietro at DePietro's in South Portland. He's my wine guy. He hooks me up. So, Gina, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. This is going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to this. Yeah. And this is something, a little bit different that we're doing. So typically where, we tell the stories of Daughters of Change. But there's another piece here that's really important, and that is offering resources to the Daughters of Change who are out there, because there's a lot of things that why should we reinvent the wheel if we can learn from one another? And something that I've struggled with, and I hear a lot of the women that I have been working with or collaborating with talking about is how to tell their story, and also how to become, a better speaker. Maybe you want to get out there on the TEDx circuit and the speaker circuit. So these are all your areas of specialty. Yes. This is your expertise, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm really excited about that. Oh, we have Eleonora here from Brazil. Cheers, Eleonora. I'm queen of everything. But actually, Gina is the queen of telling the story. And again, with confidence, clarity, and authenticity. So I'm going to read a little bit of Gina's bio here with my dollar store reading glasses. So Gina Molinari, affectionately known as Gina Mo, is the Messaging Maestro. I love that.
Thank you.
A TEDx speaking coach and speaker. She helps entrepreneurial-minded people communicate clearly, confidently, and authentically about themselves and their businesses so they can connect deeply with their ideal audience, book more clients, and make a massive impact with their work. That's really cool. Gina Mo's unique background as a never-has-been opera singer, which I already told her I was going to try to get her to sing, but we don't have the right equipment, so we're going to post something later, coupled with her 10-plus years of marketing and speaking experience, gives her the ability to help others master their messaging. So I'm really excited about this. I mean, this is... this is something that there are so many women talking about this now, about getting out there, getting their stories out there. But how do they do it? Or like we were talking about earlier, they get that idea and then they immediately shut it down because they say, oh, that's going to be too scary, right? So Gina Mo.
Yes.
Let's talk about this. So first of all, how did you get started? Like, where was your aha moment that made you realize that this was sort of your unique way of helping other people? What was your defining moment with that?
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, I had been asked to sing for a family friend's funeral. And as a Catholic, to sing the Ave Maria or to be asked to sing the Ave Maria is basically like singing the Star Spangled Banner at some sort of major event. I mean, it's a huge honor and it's, it's important. It's a very cathartic sort of moment for the family. And they hadn't heard me sing before, but they knew I sang at that time. So I was like, okay, I'm ready to put myself out there. And of course I would do this, they lost their son. Of course I'm willing to do this. Oh my God, I could already hear my Jersey accent coming out talking to you. This is fantastic. Anyway, so.
Oh yeah, girlfriend. I
said talk. I'm like, oh God, it's coming back. It's coming back. Years of trying to get rid of it. Doesn't matter. I'm not apologizing. No worries. So going back to a funeral. Yeah, awkward segue. So
that wine almost came out of my nose. Okay, we gotta be careful. Sorry.
People have that experience in working with me, unfortunately. So, I go to wake up that morning, and something you need to know about me is that I've struggled with terrible performance anxiety. That's why I'm a never has been opera singer. I went to my undergraduate to get a degree in classical voice, to really focus on being a professional performer. But I found that I really couldn't pursue it because I was actually terrified to be on stage. I was terrified to let myself go enough to perform. And so I would be really stickler for like the music and the diction and getting all the notes just so. And so I'd be like a ventriloquist dummy up there, like I love to tell people I am a great singer. I am a terrible performer, just terrible. So being asked to do that from the balcony, it's like, okay, I'm a little safe, like not all eyes on me. But I woke up that morning of the funeral with a tickle in my throat. And that's it. I panicked. I'm like, I'm going to mess this up. Every terrible thought about all the horrible things that were going to happen because I was going to mess it up and they were just all going to turn around like, oh, what is happening up there? Like just horrible, horrible images of this. So I decided before I even got in the car to go, I'm not doing it. I'm going to get there and I'm going to tell them, you know what? I'm not feeling in good voice today. So I'm not going to go ahead and do it. I'm going to have to back out today. So I get there, I get to the final viewing before the ceremony, and I'm making my way down the receiving line. And he is the oldest of 6 kids. So it is a big family to go down the receiving line. And with every person, I'm just getting more nervous and more nervous. And I get to his father and I go to open my mouth. I go to open my mouth to say it. And he's just like, all right, Gina, you're going to go next door and you're going to go talk to the organist, Karen. Yeah, I think your name is Karen. You're going to go upstairs. He was almost excited, which I know sounds crazy, but he almost sounded excited. And so of course I'm sitting there thinking, remembering why I'm there and thinking, I can't tell this man no. And so I go next door and I go upstairs to the balcony and I'm more terrified than I even was, 5 minutes ago. And I just do everything I can. I do what athletes do, and I dig deep for everything I have. And there is not a dry eye in the house. It is the best rendition of Ave Maria I have ever done. And as I look out on this audience, I see every single person just sobbing. All I see are shoulders shaking from behind and, heads in people's hands, some of them audibly so, some of them really letting go. And I realized in that moment that I had tried to let my fear, I had tried to be a coward instead of giving these people this beautiful, powerful moment. Some of them were trying so hard to still really hang on and, be a man or keep it together or what have you. But I broke open their heart so that they could bury some of their grief with Jimmy that day. And I mean, nobody else in that room that day could create that experience for them. And so I realized that day that there is something about my voice that opens up that in other people. There is something about the way that I connect with other people that really does it on this super deep level. I mean, people meet me and they're immediately telling me their secrets. That is a superpower, but it's also something that I had to learn because I spent a lot of my youth being a wallflower, being afraid of being the visible one. I told you that performance anxiety, massive, and it's stopped me from progressing and getting better, even at the things I had a natural talent for. So realizing in that moment that this is something that I can never keep to myself again, no matter how afraid I am, no matter what's at stake, in terms of my pride and my ego, there are other things that are far more important to be in service. And I was in service that day to him and his family.
So that's when so that really, that speaks to sort of your authenticity as well, yeah. Right? Because you were able to do it from the balcony and be yourself and get into yourself. So that's when you started to think about that maybe this is something that you wanted to help other people with.
Yeah. And I mean, in that moment, I didn't realize all of those exact thoughts. I knew I did something amazing. And it was one of those like, whoa, I'm going to remember this forever sort of moments. Right. And in hindsight, kind of analyzing it, that's what I noticed is what happened. But yeah, I mean, there was this huge acknowledgement of, and again, being able to sit back there and kind of reflecting over the rest of the ceremony of like, what just happened? What just came out of me? And again, that wouldn't have been possible if I had just allowed myself to be the coward, to walk away and say, oh, I have a tickle in my throat, because I was obviously fine. It was completely mental. I've been running recently. I've been training to go running. My boyfriend and I are going in July to New York City, and all he wants to do is run in Central Park. And I hate running. I hate running with a passion.
Unless somebody's chasing you.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
With a
right?
bottle of wine. No, but then you stop.
But I want to do it with him more than anything. I want to do it with him more than anything and share that experience because he's never been. So, it's training. It's training myself to do it a little bit more. And the fear of it and the loathing of it, at some point that comes to a backseat to the fact that I want to do this with him more than I want to sit there and hate running. Is really what it boils down to. And that day was no different. My desire to be in service to that family was bigger than my fears that day. And I have not let them be bigger than that since.
It's funny. I just had a great conversation this past Friday with a really cool woman. And we were talking about feeling the fear and doing it, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. Right. And how empowering that can be, right? Once you do it. And I just do have to break in here to say that Barbara Olson-Kenny is with us. She's saying nerves are the key. Barbara's also a singer. And Barbara also is the one who got me this glass that says Queen of Everything. So thank you, Barbara Jean.
Thank you, Barbara.
But yeah, that whole, that concept of kind of working through your fears. So when people, so something else, there's so much here, so forgive me here for a minute, but it's so hard to tell your own story to begin with, right? It's so much easier to tell, I think, to help somebody else sometimes with the story than to get your own story out, or maybe you're not even seeing your sort of pieces that might be unique because you're so close to it, right? Mm-hmm. So you help people craft that, like take their own specialness, if you will, their own special recipe and make that into the story, whether it's about their business or about themselves or kind of a combination, because a lot of businesses now have the personality of the entrepreneur behind them, or the entrepreneur's story is part of the business. So how's that process? Like when you're working with somebody, are there things that you see all the time? Are there a couple of key things that you tend to tell people about that confidence, clarity, and authenticity?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is the hardest thing for people to sometimes even recognize that they're not doing that they're not actually letting themselves be the face of the business. And I mean, especially when you're a solo entrepreneur, it's you. That's literally it. And so people try to hide behind their service or their talent, or they know that, these companies that like, oh, my work speaks for itself and we've been in business for however many years. I don't care. Who am I getting into bed with business-wise, I want to know why it's important to you, because that old adage of like, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. When all things are created equal, if you have somebody here who expresses to me that they care so much about this because of a story like I shared about mine, okay, let's take speaking coaches, for example. So if you had a speaking coach who's like, okay, I've been in business for 20 years and I've coached these people and all of these things and I've made millions of dollars, I'm making six figures, I'm really successful at what I do. Versus somebody like me who leans on the idea of like, look, I have seen this power created in other people. I care as much about this as you care about this. And I want you to succeed. I want you to be confident, because me being able to bring that out in you is a ripple effect of everybody that you touch thereafter. If you weigh those two things equally, the price is going to be far less the concern. You're going to trust me probably a little bit more because you know that I have your best interest at heart. It's like the difference between I don't know the terminology, but like a fiduciary who by law has to have your best interest in heart and in the financial planner, versus like a financial planner who maybe just wants to make the most money off of you, sort of thing. Right. Like people are really starting to buy with their hearts instead of just with the bottom price line, and those who really understand that are really looking for their greatness. They're really looking for improvement, and that they have to be open to the fact that like maybe they're really hiding themselves and they think they're doing a great job, but they're putting themselves out there in a way like they're trying to fit themselves into a box. Just because you see somebody else doing it that way doesn't mean that's the way you have to do it. And in fact, it could be your very detriment because it's the opposite of who you are. And so you get this weird energetic vibe of like, all right, I don't know what she's doing, but it's weird and like I'm not feeling it. But it's because you're trying to fit into somebody else's sort of box and their sort of framework for what they're creating.
That's really interesting that you say that, because sort of two things that came up with what you just said. One is that in terms of a brand, right? The day has sort of gone by where giving back or doing a company that's doing well by doing good, that's just sort of this thing you shove into your corporate social responsibility. It now needs to be baked into your very brand and your story, right? So that there's that piece of it, where you're just saying people aren't just buying a product, they're buying what's behind that product. They're buying the story behind that product. And that story better be authentic, because people have bullshit meters now, right? So,
Yes.
that whole idea of the authenticity, and whether it's a brand that you're behind the scenes of, or whether you are in fact the brand, which more and more women are. We have more and more women coaches. We have more and more women speaking, TEDx and coaching, spiritual coaches, business coaches, where they are their own brand, right? So that authenticity is so important. And if I sometimes will book speakers for events, and I'll go through and you can see who's pegged that and who hasn't. So you help with that as well, right? So you help people to get more comfortable with speaking in general, but you also help people that want to give TEDx talks as well, right?
Yeah,
and you've done some yourself.
I have not spoken at TEDx yet. I'm putting in my application for the local one right now.
Oh, hello, TEDx. Hello, I nominate her. So
I'm a TEDx coach right now. I'm not on the speaking end of it yet.
Yeah.
However, I've spoken.
You just have them. I'm coming. Don't make me go down there, TEDx. Okay. I'll get my jersey Italian on.
I haven't applied yet. So that's my own doing.
Okay, well, you just put me down as don't make her come down there. However, so
I am already the girl who grew up, my name is Gina. I have a brother named Vinny, and I grew up where they filmed The Sopranos. Okay, I could not be more of a caricature of a human being. So yeah, it's bad.
And now you're going to tell them not to make me go down there, and you just come full circle. So,
yeah. And I always know a guy. That doesn't help me either. Damn it, I'm living it. Prove it. Damn it.
I am at one with that.
It served me well. What can I say?
It is kind of fun.
Yeah.
They didn't make a TV show about it for nothing. So what are the biggest fears, or what are the biggest fears that people have? First of all, let's just talk about speaking in front of a crowd in general. So let's kind of put the TEDx over here for a second, because that's probably phase 2, right? You got to be able to get up and speak in front of the Rotary or something first, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what? And do you work primarily with women? Or you work with women and men?
I do. More women find me than men, but I do work with both. So I have a group coaching program that's specifically geared towards somebody who's, I guess you would say, more beginner, because they have more fears, more significant fears around being visible. I think that's really the biggest thing that people have that fear of getting started with. It's fear of being visible. And that can come from a whole lot of different things. And it's a matter of being self-aware of okay, where's this really coming from? So if you're doing any sort of, personal development work or anything like that, this is a really great opportunity to kind of check in with yourself. Okay, am I afraid of being visible because I don't want to be seen as wrong, because I don't want to look stupid, because I don't like what I look like? I mean, a lot of my performance anxiety as a singer came from my insecurities in my body. I didn't want people seeing my belly blow up a little bigger every time I took a deep singer's breath. All of those things can take us out of the experience and take us out of the presence that it takes to be really authentic when you're speaking. So if you're so in your head about it, then that's when, the filler words come in, and you're, that's when those come in, is because you're not present to what you're really saying. You're lacking the intention that you actually started when you started speaking. And there's this scene in The Office. We were just talking about The Office a little bit offline here, right? There's this scene in The Office where Michael Scott's like, sometimes I start speaking and I don't even know where I'm going to end up. I just hope I find it along the way. That's my experience of some people when they start talking, because they're trying to fill the void of silence. That silence makes them nervous. That's another thing that's really nerve-wracking when you're a speaker and all eyes are on you, and you don't want to make an ass of yourself, or you call back to these experiences when you're younger of maybe being embarrassed or maybe not knowing what you were doing in front of a group of people. That is a significant fear for a lot of people. And you can be really great interactive wise with one-to-one people or, a couple people at a time, but there are plenty of people who are excellent at like sales conversations and one-on-one connections that are still terrified in front of a larger group. And so just because you're strong in one doesn't mean it's not possible for you to be strong in all of those areas. So it's really interesting. You just got to really check in with yourself of, okay, where is this fear coming from? A lot of the work that I do with people is really emotional intelligence based. Like there's some life coaching in there, because if you don't get to the root of the problem, you are just putting on an act. You are just performing. And I'm not a marionette like puppeteer. That's not what I do. I help you transform the way you communicate, because it not only helps your business, it helps your personal life. I have so much freedom just being who I am and not feeling like I have to lie and cheat and make things up all the time. I'm just confident knowing, okay, I didn't lie to you about who I am or what I'm up to, so I don't have to remember it for later or something and stress myself out. I'm just who I am. And if we're not into it, great. We don't have to, work together or move forward with that. I can just kind of leave it as what it is and move on. But can you imagine living like that? Just everything is a show? Oh my God, I'm exhausted thinking about it.
Yeah, so that's where the and hello, Karen. Karen Kramer is here. Karen Maffio Kramer, another Italian girl. And John Rogers, honorary daughter of change.
Very nice.
And so that's where kind of two things come in. It sounds like the confidence and the authenticity, right? So does the authenticity bring you confidence, or does confidence bring you authenticity? Are they tied in?
Yes. Yes.
I get a star.
You get another glass of wine.
Well, okay then, because here I go. Okay. It's all her fault. Gina Mo.
Yeah.
I'll call you tomorrow with my big old melon head.
Just going to put that way.
We'll have a little conversation about that. Okay, so anyway, I got my glass of wine for being a good pupil. So how do those tie in? How does that, and are these common across the board with men and women, or so?
Yeah, so it's so interesting to see how they differ between men and women. And of course, different personality types are going to have different sort of tendencies and whatnot anyway. But women definitely have bigger fears of being visible, of being, they have bigger fears of being visible as well as being wrong. They don't want to be wrong. They don't want to be criticized. Like they just feel, we constantly feel as if we're under scrutiny as it is between our bodies and trying to balance work and home life and things like that. I don't have kids myself, but I constantly hear from the moms that I coach that there's this tug of like where your attention's being pulled and whatnot. But on the flip side, for men have a real hard struggle. Like they can be powerful in front of a group, but they lack the innate sort of vulnerability, and they think that being a strong speaker is enough, but sometimes that vulnerability piece is what they're missing. So with the last class that I just did of that group coaching program I was talking about, I had one man in there. Of 12 people, I had one man in there. I loved it. He was my token. And he is a very strong public speaker, very strong. And so I was like, I don't even know why he's taking this class. And it became very evident after a little bit, like, okay, that's what's missing. He had a very intense facial expression all the time. He had the male equivalent of resting bitch face, right?
Resting bitchy
totally
face.
Did. And I told him that to his face. Like, I'm not afraid of like this being out there. Like I told him that, like, sorry, dude, like we get to work on this. And so he would literally sit there at his desk all day. God bless him. He was so committed to this. He sat at his desk all day with his webcam on him, much like I'm doing now, and watched his facial expressions as he worked. So he would focus on the facial expressions, this whole idea of like, oh, that's just my face. Bullshit. I call it bullshit on that because it's a learned behavior. Yeah. And I can show, there's this image I created of like, two art pieces next to each other. Like if you've ever seen American Gothic, which is that iconic one with like, the old lady and the guy with the pitchfork.
The pitchfork, yeah.
Yeah. So you look at her face and she has very unengaged cheekbones. She's like Droopy the dog, that cartoon, right? Just like, yeah. And then you look at the Mona Lisa, who's not smiling, but her cheekbones are engaged, that like Tyra Banks sort of smizing thing that she always says, right? And it's a much more approachable resting face. Yes, it's work to try and unlearn the thing. It's not your face. It's a lack of intention for your face.
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, that's the same thing with our actual language too, where it's like, oh, that's just the way I talk. I had to very much unlearn that brash East Coast personality. I'm still very honest with people and very upfront with them, but I don't do it with nearly as much abrasiveness, nearly as much. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it
Yeah,
just
no.
wasn't working for me. The way that people were relating to me, and me uses as it is an excuse of like, oh, well, I'm just speaking my truth. That doesn't give you permission to be an asshole.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
I'm
the thing.
just being honest. Yeah.
I'm just being no, that's you not wanting to put a filter. Like there's ways to be tactful and all of that. But going back to, I got a little off track, but going back to the confidence and authenticity piece, it really is cyclical. So I like to give people opportunities to find what makes them confident. So for example, you know, I went to the gym before we hopped on this call here, you know, I made sure to get a quick shower or whatever, so I was still presentable. But like doing that makes me proud. I'm working hard. I'm doing something that I can be proud of and like I feel good. One of my first workshops that I did, I was really nervous. It was my first like really big one in front of about 40 people. And I everybody that was helping me, I was like, get out. I need the room to myself for a minute. And I just blasted the music and sang with it. You know, I just had what I like to call an anchor. I had something to do and to utilize to like get myself in this place of flow, right? This flow idea is really big. And it can be literally anything, you know, for some people, it's like having a little dance party before they get started with something that makes them nervous. Or this is my favorite one. So I like to tell people, you know, picture somebody who you really admire in front of you and picture them like, come on, you can do it. Like, I believe in you sort of thing. I had one client who's very into politics. I'm like, who is that person to you? Joe Biden. Okay. So she's sitting there picturing like, come on, kid, you got it. Like, she smiled. I picture her winking at me, and I was like, you know what? If that's what works for you, if that calms you down, do it. And she did, and it worked. She was so nervous to speak in front of like a really large group for a charity event, and she did fantastic. And it just something to anchor. And honestly, that makes me smile a little bit. So even if I thought, it just takes you out of your head, out of that fear long enough to do the thing. So much like when I was singing back in the day, you know, had I had something to anchor myself and dissipate the nerves long enough to step into courage. Because I think fearlessness is bullshit, quite honestly. Yeah. Fearlessness, I mean, just because you don't have the same fears I do doesn't make you fearless.
Everybody has fear. Yeah.
Something. Everybody's got something. Exactly. So for me to look at you and say, oh, she's fearless, so I can't do something. No,
it's just feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Yes,
I think that's really what it is. And then, so would you say that for people, so starting with the beginners who are just, you know, not that comfortable with speaking, once they get out there and do it once or twice, does that start, you know, building the confidence so it becomes easier? Or are there certain things that people have to overcome over and over again, or does it just kind of depend on the person?
It depends on the person, but it is a little bit like exposure therapy. I mean, if you do it enough times, basically the reason that we're scared of things is because somewhere along the line, we have built up evidence to believe that this is something we can't do. Yeah. And so we get nervous around it. And maybe there's an actual experience. Maybe it's an experience that's like imparted on you, like your parents are really nervous to do it. And so now you've kind of taken on their anxiety or something like that. I've seen that happen. But somewhere along the line, you learned that this is something you can't do, that you're not strong at, and that's the story you tell yourself. So when you start building evidence to the contrary, it becomes easier to kind of like stretch just a little bit more into areas that are uncomfortable. Now, I'm not saying by any means like start from zero and, oh, I'm petrified to speak in front of large groups and then go stand on a TEDx stage. That's kind of insane and is an opportunity for you to like really make it worse for yourself, actually. But I mean, to just do little things at a time. Half the people in my class that took it, they, you know, this one was like, oh yeah, you know, I have an audio studio at home. I do all of my applications for new work online. I don't have to go meet anybody. I don't have to network or anything. But I was like, think of how many opportunities you're missing to make connections, to be able to meet new people that can lead you to new work and be able to really establish that relationship that's going to be ongoing. She's like, okay, yeah, I think that's something that's valuable. So she tries. She starts to go out a little bit. She starts to speak in front of a couple new people at a time. I had actually kind of forced her to come to my networking meeting, which is like 50 people in the room, but it's the like highest energy, nicest room you could possibly go into. I was like, okay, I promise I'm not feeding you to the wolves. This is a bigger group than probably you'd want to jump to, but it's just such a safe space. Like, go try it. And she does that. And then she made a great connection because I gave her a little coaching on how to present herself that day and how to really maximize her elevator pitch. And then she goes and makes those great connections. And she did get some work out of that, which was fantastic. Now she's Facebook Live videos every day. Almost every single day. Yeah. The girl who was hiding in her studio at home is magically all of a sudden doing Facebook Live as a new marketing strategy.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Because, I am not shy.
Mm-hmm.
First time I did a Facebook Live, I literally kind of put the thing on and it took me 20 minutes to actually push the button to go live,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's huge. So
mm-hmm.
do you find that, so for authenticity, to me, that also equates with being a little bit vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Like in terms of like, this is who I am. I'm kind of throwing it out there. I'm laying it out there. So when you think of something that's truly authentic, they just kind of are who they are, right? And that doesn't mean they don't have filters or they're rude, but they're not afraid to sort of kind of lay out there to the world who they are. Mm-hmm. So do you find that that's really the thing that's tough for people with that is the vulnerability aspect? And how do you help get people past that?
Yeah, it is. It is vulnerability, but my hesitation with like announcing that as being part of it is that vulnerability, even the term has a bit of a stigma with it. Vulnerability to a lot of people is weakness. Vulnerability to a lot of people is, airing your dirty laundry. And that's scary for some people because some people have a lot of skeletons in their closet, really big, scary ones. And nobody's saying you have to let them out and show all the world to see. But there are ways to just let people in a little bit to your life that get them to know you and be a little more personable. And it's a little bit of vulnerability, but when you try to jump too far into that space, it can come across as inauthentic and like you're forcing it. And then it's just uncomfortable to watch. So
interesting.
Yeah. So something that I like to tell people to give a try to is like, just take a little note card or a piece of paper and write out as many things as you can that you really, really love and are passionate about. And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be business related. It doesn't have to be, related to work or anything like that, but just anything you can think of. And I've had people in my workshops coming up with all sorts of random stuff. They're like s'mores, cats, gardening, like literally anything you could think of. And they're just like, well, I don't understand how this is supposed to help me be more authentic in, especially the social media space. Like, how am I supposed to do something with this? So the s'mores one, this one made me really happy.
Oh my God.
So the girl who
that makes me hungry.
Right?
Just saying.
People love s'mores. And that's the thing, is like people love s'mores. It's not just her, people love s'mores. So she was a travel agent and she was a relatively new mom, finally getting back out into the workforce. Now the kid was a little bit older, a little bit more independent and in daycare or school, wherever he was. And she's just saying, I don't understand how to make s'mores into something that I can use. And I said, well, you're a travel agent. And you focus on families, right? So I imagine somewhere there's s'mores of some sort of family memory of like everybody around the campfire. You're eating s'mores together. You're laughing. Maybe the moon is out. There's fireworks, something like that. You're creating that experience. You loved it so much. You want to pass that experience on to other people and create those same sort of memories. So immediately something that you like, something that lights you up and makes you smile a little bit, turns into a marketing strategy, turns into a little bit of a story to go into that. And the same thing, with cats. Somebody's like, yeah, cat videos. That's really going to be a good marketing strategy, right? Like everybody is just such fluff. And I had a woman who came in and she was talking about how she focuses a lot on coaching women who are in like the next phase of life, really start to amp up their passion again. It's like, okay, everything's kind of status quo. And she does that with the vehicle of community service. She really believes in community service and giving back to your community. And I was like, okay, well, think of something with cats, because, she was a huge animal lover. Think of something with cats that maybe can tie into the service, how you've ever been in service when it comes to pets or something like that. Right. And she remembered almost the original moment that she believed in charity and community service. In that moment, she had a neighbor who had a bunch of pets and they were just not really doing well financially. They lost their jobs or something, but they wouldn't give up the pets, even though they couldn't necessarily feed them or take care of them any longer. So she and her significant other at the time had gone over and said, look, we know you're struggling, but we also want to give these animals a really great home. If you feel comfortable, we would love to take them into our home and care for them instead. So
Oh,
she
wow.
was able to be in service to another family, to give these animals a home because of cats, because of her love of animals. And that's the moment that she realized the power of service, because the relief on this couple's face that they weren't going to have to like give them up to a shelter and possibly, you know, have them put down or something. The relief they had to know that they were going to a great home where they would be really well cared for was just such a powerful moment for her. That might have been the origin of why she started doing this work in the first place. And it's like, okay, well, you know, of course she knew she loved cats, but she never would have made that synapse otherwise. So you'd be surprised what you come up with when you just write about things that light you up, because that's really where the authenticity comes from. I don't care if you're extroverted, if you're introverted, whatever it is. When you talk about something you love, you light up, and it's really easy to communicate about things that you love.
So that's when you talk about, and we talked about this offline, and I believe, I know you and I talked about it, and perhaps it's even on your website, but that idea of what are the things, the unique things about you that tie into your story, right? So these are things that you might not even pick up on if somebody didn't help you kind of get there, right? So, so as this story you just told, that might be something that somebody said, well, you know, I did that, and then they kind of go on their merry way, but they don't realize how powerful that example is, or that story is, in terms of using it in a speaking engagement and telling it, because it makes you relatable to people, right? So,
incredible.
And the passion comes out, right? When your passion is authentic, that's key, right?
Yeah, and it makes you credible. I mean, we constantly think of credibility and authority as some sort of degree or a certification or a class of some kind that we took. Sometimes it's just your life experience. Sometimes it's because you love something so much. That's really all that matters. Because if you care more about, you know, it's the Rudy syndrome. Like Rudy was as popular as he was because he was all heart. And, you know, despite the fact that everybody else may have had some more natural talent, he was the guy that everybody was looking to when it came to. That was
such a great movie. Are you talking about the football movie? Rudy the football movie? Are we talking about that? I love that movie. Oh my God, that was like the best. Yeah, I haven't thought about that in ages, but I love that.
I didn't either. I was like, oh, that came to me.
When you said that, I was like, oh my God, I love that. But yeah, this is the stuff that true, like when you hear speakers that you really connect with, those are the types of little nuances that make a big difference, right? So, oh my God, so you probably run the gambit with the people you work with, from people that are very confident and need to hone it, to people that are just like, oh my God, I could never thought that I could possibly do this. Is there any commonality around all of that? Like across the board, are there like a top 2 or 3 kind of tips that you said to yourself, I wish I had known that, or if I could impart this to people regardless of where they're at?
Wow, that's a good one. I think
give me another glass of wine. God knows what I'll come up with.
I'm trying to think of like there's a common thread between all of them that like on all ends of the spectrum. I know there's certainly like between, you know, the beginners and the intermediate and the more advanced or whatever. But I think I mean everybody comes to me with some sort of fear, and in my experience, it's not because they're really afraid of doing the thing. You know, they wouldn't come and talk to me and seek me out for support with this, even if they don't wind up working with me because of whatever reason. You know, they're afraid because they care, because they want to do something justice, and because they want to do the best job that they can. And it's not necessarily about them. They just have this deeper calling. And that's why in my bio, it's, you know, entrepreneurial minded people. It doesn't have to be entrepreneurs specifically. It just has to be people who have a desire for something bigger and better and that more impact, you know, that they truly know there's something inside them that's called to make a difference. And despite any sort of reservations they have, whether they think they're too fat, they're too old, they're too short, they're too white, they're too this, they're whatever, there's still so much power in that fear, because that's the thing that keeps you moving forward. Even though you feel stuck, that fear is telling you like, no, there's more for you. And that's not something to be afraid of. It's something to explore and get curious with.
So at the end, there's always a underpinning of fear with all of this, right?
Yeah, regardless, and it shows up different ways. Yeah.
But I love what you just said about, you know, that if it's there's something that they want to do. There's something that they want to achieve that's kind of bigger than them, right? And so even though, I know for me personally, with Daughters of Change, here I'm like on Facebook Live with my glass of wine, like, wah, wah, wah. But for me, it was hard to put myself out in front initially, right? But the push behind it was bigger than that, right? So and again, there's so many people that I meet now that have these stories to tell around their brands, around their business, around what they're doing, that it's a really difficult thing to do when you're talking about yourself, regardless of how confident you are, how authentic you are, how clear you are on your message. And sometimes can we talk about the clarity for a second? Because we've talked sort of about the confidence and getting past the fear and the authenticity and what that means. But clarity is what is it that Brene Brown says? Like, clarity is kindness, or clarity is kind. Anyway, there's an interesting around that, but clarity is so important. And sometimes it's hard to get to that clarity because you have so much in your head, right? So you've got these big ideas and you've got all these things you want to do and they're overwhelming, and you are very clear within yourself what they are, but getting it out of your head to make it clear to somebody else. So let's talk about that for a little bit, because I bet, am I the only person that finds that to be a little bit overwhelming?
No, I constantly have people coming to me saying that they just feel like they stumble over their words. And sometimes they feel like they get their point out, but they can see the other person registering confusion. Yeah. So they keep talking, and then somehow they make it worse. Like they just, somehow they're actually really struggling what they're really struggling to do is communicate the value of what they're doing. They're really struggling to communicate why this is the important thing that's going to save this other person's pain point, that's going to solve their pain point. And then also why they specifically are the one to solve it. So it's not enough just to know that this is your pain point. I recognize your pain point. This is how the solution that I have to solve it. And here's why I'm the solution to it. Because that's truly what sets you apart from your competitors. I don't feel like I have competitors necessarily as colleagues who also offer what I offer, right? Which is all very different. We all bring different experiences and pasts and all of that to the table. Yeah. So for me to connect with somebody and say, this is what I can offer you. If this is your struggle of getting clear and being able to close sales, because people aren't going to close a sale with you. They're not going to buy from you if they don't see the value in it. If you're not communicating like, okay, well, this is really what I'm getting. This is why it's important and how it's solving the thing that I'm really coming to you for. So my first business actually was a total failure. Fantastic. So my first business was coaching musicians how to be entrepreneurs, which every person I talked to, they were like, oh my God, that is such a fantastic idea. We don't get that in college. Nobody teaches us that. Right. That's wonderful. Right. So I spent thousands of dollars and thousands of hours putting in content, all this free content and webinars and all this shit. I didn't make a single dollar. I was like, I don't understand. Like, what the hell is this
What's up with that? Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can't tell me in one breath that like this is fantastic and this is so needed, and then nobody actually wants to pay me for it. What the hell is happening? And what I realized, and this is really a lot of where my work stems from, is there was a huge lack of clarity of talking to them about what they needed. They were saying, I'm a starving artist. I can't pay my bills. I'm not getting enough gigs. I don't know how to meet new people in this industry. And I was telling them the answer. And that's a huge problem because they don't recognize that that's the thing they need if I'm not speaking to them in a way they understand. Yeah. So that was a huge, but I didn't even figure that out until like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I was like, oh shit, that's what happened.
Yeah, but it's really, it can be difficult when you're that close to it. And Karen is saying clarity comes with action.
Yes.
So, but it can be, especially if you're doing something conceptual versus like, I have a widget and here's what it does, or but whatever it is, when we're really close to it, it's hard to sometimes be clear, right? So
well, and you're coming from like the woke side of the equation, right? So of course it's hard to see the forest for the trees when it happens.
And like so it's in your head, it's very clear, but when you try to get it out to other people, they're like,
Yeah. Well, you gotta do market research and figure out what is the pain point that they're really looking to have solved. And yes, I have the tools in my toolbox to address them. And I can't tell you how many people come to me. They have no idea that authenticity is their issue. They come to me because they hate speaking in front of other people and because they're not closing sales because people aren't getting it. Like, that's their pain point. I can't talk to them and say, like, well, I'm going to want you to be authentic. We're going to sign up for authenticity. Like, nobody gives a shit about that. I know that that's really the key of it, but they don't know that yet. And so I can't sell that to them that way because they're not going to understand. They're not going to see that value. Yeah, it's really powerful. And then, I mean, being able to practice the way that we communicate it, once we get it, once we figure out the way, okay, this is what they're asking for. These are the superpowers I bring to the table with it. You know, now it's a matter of practicing that. So, you know, she said that clarity is what did she say? Clarity is something.
It's clear. Well, she was saying that clarity comes with action. Yes. Now she's also asking, Karen's asking, how did you figure out the right language to use so that people could hear you? Yeah,
so that's the market research part. I had to specifically seek out the people that I was looking to focus on, you know, people who I knew struggled with speaking, people who I knew weren't having consistent sales in their business, and ask them the questions, okay, where are you feeling like you're struggling? And the language that I get is they're stumbling over their words, that they're not feeling confident in speaking in front of large groups. They have filler words constantly, and there's a lack of confidence there. And confidence is even sometimes a little bit of a crapshoot, because I'm not sure whether or not they realize that confidence is something we can really work on together, or if they're having that conversation of like, nope, that's just who I am. And so, like, you know, I'm an introvert. That's just not something I can. Whole other conversation. Yeah. So, but being able to then take that market research, being able to adapt it into a marketing strategy and practicing it until it is solid, until you could interrupt me every other word and I'd still be able to come back to it solid and clear and knowing exactly what I'm saying and the value that I'm giving to you. Because that's a piece that I think a lot of people miss. They're worried about sounding really rehearsed, and they're worried about sounding like a used car salesman or something really sleazy when they do it, right? But the problem with going off the cuff is that you're losing that intention and losing that confidence to really deliver on the certain points that you set out to do. So if you are so clear on points A, B, and C, then anything can interrupt you. Any reaction that you get from somebody else, you know, any sort of combativeness. I've gone into workshops, you know, you have people sitting there like waiting to be impressed. Yeah. You know, if they're giving me one of those.
Feet up on the desk, cigar in the mouth.
Yeah. If I'm not practiced, if I am not prepared beyond belief, I can't handle that without stressing myself out of like, oh my God, what's happening? Is he going to overthrow me? Is he going to just completely take over the room? Like, I'm going to have all those conversations about worry about what this person is doing instead of being in service to the rest of the people in the room who are actually very engaged. So instead, I see it as game at this point now, because at that point I'm like, all right, come on in. Let's see what happens.
But you've been doing this for a while, right? So, but for when that first happens, so there's kind of that happy medium there, like not being overly practiced and polished to the point where you can't be yourself, but being just completely fly by the seat of your pants.
There's a cliff. There's a cliff. So you practice, and this is something I get from being a musician. You practice and practice and practice and practice until you want to kill yourself. And then eventually you practice so much that you don't have to think about the words anymore. You don't have to think about the music and the notes that you're hitting. You can focus on the body language. You can focus on the facial expressions. You can focus on in the moment, you know, if the mood strikes you, you can play with a little embellishment on it. And that's the same thing with your speaking, because if you're so set in it, then you have the flexibility because there's such stability in what you've been practicing. And I mean, it doesn't even have to take a lot of practice. Sometimes it's just being prepared for a scenario. So I had one client, oh my God, this is one of my favorite stories. So I had one client who is a craft beer delivery guy. He's one-man operation, and his whole website says like, we do this, we do that, whatever. And I'm like, you know, what are you going to say if somebody asks you how many people you have on your team? And he didn't know how to answer me. I was like, well, you're either going to lie. Yeah, like you're either going to lie and then, you know, lie about how many people you have on staff, and they're going to wonder why you can't handle certain things by yourself. Or you're going to backpedal and say, oh, well, it's just me, but the website says we and our company does it. Like, that's a common issue I see all the time with entrepreneurs. They write we all over their website because they think it legitimizes.
Yeah.
That drives me batty. You lose the personal element when you do that. You're not impressing anybody. Nobody gives a shit if it's just you or
changing my website tomorrow. No, okay. No, I'm funny that you say that because I go back and forth with that. So I'm glad that you're saying that.
Yeah. No, so it gets better. So we had that conversation. I was like, what are you going to say if that's the case? And he's just like, well, it'd be nice if I could buy another truck or whatever. So, maybe I'll say something like that. I'm like, okay, fine. Just keep in mind, somebody may ask you. Yeah. So he goes into a room to give a pitch to a room full of ideal clients. And he has one of those guys, sitting back there doing one of these. He's got him. And everybody's enrolled. We got him talking about his passion. He's super excited about what he's talking about and getting everybody to tap back into why they got into this business in the first place. And then you have Mr. Combative who's like, so if it's just you, how are you going to be able to handle all of our work? And he's like, sir, I would love if you were the reason that I could buy a second truck. And the room erupted in laughter. He was prepared. He was charming. Had he not been prepared and thought of that beforehand, it would have been a very uncomfortable moment and awkward. Yeah. He might have backpedaled and lost his credibility right there and undermined himself. But he was prepared and he thought about it. So, it doesn't take much practice. Sometimes it's just being prepared for some of the worst case scenarios.
That's, that's some excellent points there and things that I think that it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole if you don't think about it or you don't have somebody to kind of put that mirror in front of you, right? To say, have you thought about this? So my dear, we've been on almost an hour.
I'm not surprised.
This is I could go for another hour. This is cool. And I love what you're doing because it's really needed right now. People need that, in my humble opinion, and I know for myself, what a struggle, some of just kind of getting the story out from my head to other people, even though it's very clear here. The authenticity is a part, maybe for me, that isn't hard, but the clarity, the communicating, clear here, getting it out, really hard, right? So I think we all kind of struggle with these different pieces. But the story is so important now.
Yes.
It's so important, whether it's our individual story, whether it's our brand story, but that all is becoming interrelated, right? There's really kind of, it's really not one way or the other anymore. That's really part of what people are expecting and anticipating. And it's where people trust brands. That's what brings trust to the brand, right? So you're doing some really cool stuff here.
Thank you.
And so, Gina, I know that you do workshops. What do you have coming up if people are interested to learn more about this? We've hit sort of the tip of the iceberg and we could probably go on all day. This could be a workshop, right? But by that point, let me tell you, honey, never mind the hook. Somebody will be coming in hauling me out by my footsies because and girlfriend's gonna kill out of her chair, or get wine narcolepsy. But anywho, my 8:30 coffee appointment tomorrow morning, I'm gonna really need the coffee. Let's hope I make it for 8:30. But talk about some of what you have coming up. Let's talk about how people can get a hold of you because you've got a lot of wisdom to impart here.
Thank you. Yeah. So I actually have my group coaching program that I referred to a couple of times. That starts next Monday, June 10th. And I love that program.
I'm going to put you up on the thing. So they're not seeing me, but I'm going to start writing this in the comments. Okay.
Okay, sure. So
coaching program starts Monday.
My coaching program starts Monday, June 10th, and that is a 13-week program where we go over all of these little intricacies. It's, very online based. It's virtual based. I'm based in Columbus, Ohio. I actually don't host a lot of workshops anymore. I come in as guest speakers to other groups so that they can, tomorrow morning, I'm going to a local chamber of commerce to teach their group about a very similar topic of how to talk about yourself in business, right? So a lot of my content is really based online. I do most of it on Facebook. So you can find me at facebook.com/Gina Mo. My Instagram is what's my handle? The Gina Mo. My Instagram is the Gina Mo. And then
hold on, Facebook.com, because I've had some wine. Facebook.com
/Gina Mo.
Gina Mo. Gina Mo. Okay. And then Instagram is
The Gina Mo.
the Gina Mo. I love that. and so just to be sure, that's a 13-week course. It starts the 10th. And that's a virtual course, correct?
Yes, it is a virtual course. It's a lot of Facebook and Zoom based. So if you want to check out what those details are, it maps out what every single module looks like and what order they come in. That's on my website at ginamolinari.com. You'll see there's a tab that says
Gina Molinari, which I can spell because I'm an Italian girl. And I bet you that Karen could spell it too. GinaMolinari.com.
How do you think I go by Gina Mo? I'm like, I'm tired of spelling my name.
Okay, so I've got that up there. So those are all in the comments now. We've got that up there. Okay, I'm sorry, keep going. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, those are the best places to reach me on my website. I have, if you guys have questions, I do free 60-minute calls. I do free 60-minute calls for people who, just to get an idea of where they're at, how I can best support them and that sort of thing. Okay. Because maybe you're applying for a TEDx and you want to make sure you do the application right and you want to get the speech all prepared. I do one-on-one coaching for people who are creating their legacy speech. So if you're one of those people who's a little more seasoned in your speaking
that would be
experience,
one-on-one, right? Yes. So if somebody's looking to, if somebody has maybe perhaps been asked to do a TEDx talk, or that's their kind of goal, they're kind of reaching for that would be more one-on-one stuff, correct?
Correct, yeah. And then I have what I call a Clarity Clinic, which is a VIP day with me.
I need that. Clarity Clinic.
Yes, you get a VIP day with me, and we sit down for a bunch of hours. I actually think I'm going to scale it back. I had it at 6 hours, but I think I want to scale it back to like 4. But we sit down and we knock out all of these things.
Can we do that in Hawaii? Or do we come to?
You gotta pay for me to go to Hawaii, but yeah.
Yeah, if you pay for Hawaii, she'll do it in Hawaii, right? Because you know what, Gina, maybe somebody from Hawaii will watch this. Brazil, she'll come to Brazil too. So it's just
there is a opera house in the middle of the Amazon jungle in Brazil that I have been dying to go to ever since I heard that it existed. So
you should touch base with Eleonora. She is so cool, and she will tell you exactly where that is.
Yes, I would love that. Well, and I do plan on doing one of those like retreats for a Clarity Clinic sort of weekend at some point. That's not on the roster yet, but let's go to my website, check out those sort of 3 levels. So it's the group coaching program, that Clarity Clinic where we talk about, who to target in your audience, what your superpowers are, really get clear on what your stories can be and how to craft all that into a marketing strategy. I mean, that's really the important part. And then you get some like post VIP day support in terms of editing and, I used to be an editor and stuff. So any copy that you create for your website, like I go in.
Oh, really cool. So you can edit copy too. So let's just wait. Let's just back up for 1 minute and talk about that because that's important though.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of people. So if somebody has their information ready for the website, can they hire you to do that specifically or no?
I mean, together we're working on a whole marketing strategy and it's about creating your story and creating your personal brand within your business. So I will edit it as I used to do that. The exception to that is if somebody's creating their memoir, which is something I don't really advertise that I do a lot, but I do help people write their memoirs. I help people write their memoirs and then I help edit along the way. So not only do I coach you in how to do it effectively and powerfully, so it's not just like a woe is me sort of story or something like that.
That's really cool. Okay, wait, so let's just back up on that for a minute because that's actually really, really cool. So you will work one-on-one with somebody that is writing their memoirs and you will help them kind of from soup to nuts on that.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So that's kind of unique. I like that.
Yeah.
I
don't advertise it a lot because I like to be picky about who I work with because it is a very intensive experience.
And probably long, right? That's a long, that's a long relationship. That's not happening like.
That's a 9-month relationship.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you come to me with like an idea or something or you have some copy to get started, that's great. But I mean, we have to start at the beginning and like get an idea of what's going on in your head and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But I do have that editing experience. Actually, the one girl that I did like my first big book for, it's called Strength Personified. And she just lived it like this horrible, horrible childhood, very tragic sort of situation growing up and everything. And all I wanted for her and all she wanted was to make sure that the story read as inspirational instead of like this train wreck of a youth that she had that just like wanted to peep in on,
Hope
right?
as opposed to train wreck. I like that.
Yes, and that's all the feedback she's getting. And then, even after the fact,
Cool.
she's calling me up like, oh my God, this happened now. And like, she's getting a bunch of speaking engagements because she's had this book and everything. I mean, it's amazing. Like, I want that for you as much as you want that for you, because that's powerful. That's your legacy that you're walking away with, right? So, and I mean, I'm working on my book too. I get to have that out sometime later this year, but.
Oh my God,
yeah.
so there's all kinds of stuff happening,
Oh.
Gina Mo. So we're going to have to do like Wine and Wisdom Part 2. We are now at officially an hour.
Oh shit.
And I could go on I could go on all day. Like I still have like half a bottle of wine left. Oh my God, that's scary. But yeah. Okay, so anyway. I have a little more than a half. A half and a smidge. But this has been, oh my God, Gina, this has been great. You and I am sure are going to stay in touch. We need to talk about things beyond this, but this has been fascinating. There's so much here. And thank you to everybody that joined us. I know it's a long hour. I hope you come back in and watch what you missed. And Gina Mo from the homeland, my Jersey goddess. I love it. So,
Thank you for having me.
I want to hear. Okay, so I want to hear you sing Ave Maria, which is one of my favorite songs. Both versions, by the way, I love both versions. So, I want to hear you sing Ave Maria sometime when we have the right microphone.
I might have that somewhere, but I don't have it like as somebody pointed out on here, like the nerves are key. So I have a recorded demo version that I did, but it's not as good as the live one.
Well, I want to hear it live. So
I know.
We're just going to have a party and we're going to hear it live.
Fair enough.
Right? Done. Okay.
Fair enough.
Gina Mo, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you to everybody who joined us. And if you're chiming in after this was live, well, thank you for listening to us recorded, unplugged, whatever that might be. And hopefully I don't have a hangover. Okay. I probably will. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Gina. You take care, girl. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.